Hi, I'm author Tom Avatabile. Recently, I appeared on Streetwise with highly decorated retired NYPD detective Lou Tolano to discuss the setting of my new thriller, Ask Not, and some of the still nagging questions surrounding the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in 1963. The Warren Commission was developed, and again, if true,
right,
by Lyndon Johnson.
Who was the vice president at the time?
Lyndon Johnson?
Wasn't he?
Yes, he was the vice president, but on November 22nd, on Air Force One, he was sworn in as president of the United States.
But it was his request or whatever, or order to form?
He was afraid. He was afraid. They'd found out that Lee Harvey Oswald had defected to Russia and that he was a communist. And they were afraid that if that word got out, the American people would be clamoring for a war against the Soviet Union.
Right.
Okay? He didn't want that. Now, again, if true, he calls Earl Warren and he says, we got to make it seem like this boy did all the shooting because, you know, we can't have anybody, and on and on and on. Now, if you know anything about Johnson and the stories about Johnson, he was a man who always got his way. Okay? And even if you're the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, when Lyndon Johnson calls you, you tend to respond.
Well, after 10 drinks, he got his way. He was the boss. That's the rumor. I mean, that's the story.
Right. Well, that works too, but that's a whole nother conspiracy theory.
That's another, right.
So the Warren Commission was formed, but what's interesting about the Warren Commission is who was on it. Moment of history. During John F. Kennedy's presidency, there was an attempt called the Bay of Pigs. Yes. Now, some people might remember that. It was an attempt to bring Cuban patriots who had escaped to America, assemble them, and send them back to Cuba as an army to take back Cuba from Castro and the communists. Right. Okay? This was a CIA plot. So they got all these Cuban exiles together, and they gave them arms, and they trained them, and they built boats, and they were sending them back to Cuba to kick Castro out and take the island back. Kennedy never approved that. And at one point, they needed air cover because the Cuban army was sizable, and any ground invasion, any beach invasion, as we learned in Normandy and we learned in the war, needs air cover. Kennedy refused the air cover. He said, I'm not doing that. I'm not putting...
He didn't want to make it seem like a world war.
Yeah, well, he knew that the Russians were there, and he didn't want to have a proxy showdown with the Russians. So he denied them air cover. And those 1,500 or whatever the number was, Cubans got slaughtered on the beach. Yeah. Okay?
It failed, I should say. Yeah.
That was a CIA mission. Right. The head of the CIA at that time was Allen Dulles. And I think I've got this right. Kennedy and his brother fired Allen Dulles from the CIA. Guess who was on the Warren Commission? Allen Dulles.
Amazing.
And recently, Robert F. Kennedy, who's running for president, Jr., Robert F. Kennedy, Jr., has stated on numerous occasions that he has proof, and again, this is what he says, that the CIA killed his uncle being John F. Kennedy, the 35th president of the United States. That's an astounding accusation made from someone who is in the public sphere, okay? He also supports this, that in the minutes after the assassination, his father, Robert F. Kennedy, the Attorney General of the United States, called the FBI and said, was this you? Did you do this? And then he called the CIA and said, was this you? Did you do this? In Ask Not, Hank Larson has to confront these issues surrounding the Kennedy assassination as he is on the trail of his brother's killer. While doing so, he and the woman who volunteers to help him unwittingly become the target of the powerful men who want to keep the true story of JFK's murder a secret.